Hello and welcome back to another figure battle, and today it's ape versus ape. In this corner we have Gorilla Grodd from McFarlane Toys, based on his appearance in the video game Injustice 2. And in this corner we have Kali from the Animal Warriors of the Kingdom line by Spiro Toys. And this figure battle is brought to you by the generosity of my friend Jim Salzberg. Jim purchased these figures for himself and has generously loaned them to me for the purpose of this figure battle. So thank you very much, Jim. Let's get on with it. Gorilla Grodd first appeared in the Flash number 106 in May of 1959. A fugitive from Gorilla City, Grodd gained the powers of telekinesis and telepathy from an alien meteorite. Grodd has always been one of the major villains in the DC universe, founding the Secret Society of Supervillains both in the comics and in the Justice League animated series, and he was one of the founding members of the Legion of Doom on the Super Friends cartoon. Being a gorilla, Grodd usually appears naked in all his appearances. He doesn't need clothing like we puny men do. In this version from the video game, he is covered in a golden armor, which makes him look very formidable. On the back of the box, we get a nice shot of the figure itself, along with a cross-sell of artwork from other figures available in the line. Here we have Kali in his Conquest armor from the Animal Warriors of the Kingdom line by Spiro Toys. I believe Animal Warriors of the Kingdom, which most people refer to as AWOC, began as a smaller scale line, but has recently moved up to the popular 1/12 6-inch scale. I don't know much about the AWOC line, but I do know there are a series of tie-in comics to explain the backstory, and there's also a board game that's scheduled for spring 2023. On the back of Kali's box, we get a little bit of a write-up. Emperor Kali, reigning over all of the great animal houses, this tyrannical leader rules with an iron paw. And we get that same write-up in 5 different languages, along with a collect them all cross-sell on the bottom there. And I have to say, from what I've seen of the AWOC series, these are all really nice looking figures. Just like all of the McFarlane DC figures, inside the box for Grodd we have a figure stand and a trading card attached to the back of the package with a blister. I don't need to take those off for the review, and I am returning these figures to my friend Jim, so I'm going to leave those where they are. Grodd is a nice big bulky figure. I really like the sculpt on him. I really like the detail that's been put into the armor, like the spikes on the skulls, on his upper arms there. There's a lot of nice sculpting overall on the armor pieces. But as far as I can tell, all this armor is glued on, including the helmet. So if you wanted to customize this and pull off this armor, I'm not sure what you're going to find underneath. Probably a lot of glue residue. And I'm not even sure if the sculpting would be finished on the pieces that are hidden by the armor. Even though it looks great, the armor does, however, hinder a lot of articulation. And as I go through, you'll see what I mean. There is some nice paintwork on the face though, on his mouth and teeth, and inside his eyes he does have some red pupils. So some nice detail in there. As far as articulation, he can move his head around. His shoulders can go all the way around. There is a bicep cut that is hindered by the armor. He does have elbows that are single jointed and ratcheted, if you can hear that. His wrist can just kind of flip in and out like this. There's no rotation in the wrist. Really not a lot of usable articulation in the torso to speak of. There is an ab crunch and a cut in there, but like I said, the armor and the sculpt is going to limit whatever you can do there. He does have some movable thighs, as well as a cut to move the shin, and he does have single jointed knees, which are again ratcheted, just like the elbows. And he does have toe articulation, where you can move a portion of the foot like so, And you can see he's got a little bit of armor on his big toe as well. So you can kind of reach up with his foot and slash your neck. So a very good looking figure. Nice sculpt. It's too bad the armor pieces don't come off. But I know McFarlane does like to release his figures at a reasonable price, so that's probably why. It probably adds to the cost. And with the articulation being hindered, this is a good looking figure to put on your shelf, but if you want to put it in various poses, this is not going to do it for you. Unlike Grodd, you are getting a variety of accessories with Kali. We have these two scimitar looking swords, as well as a very steampunk looking firearm. He also comes with this little Ziploc baggie, which contains the alternate hands. And that includes a pair of open hands and a pair of fists. As with the Grodd figure, some very striking gold armor on this guy, which is also broken up by a sort of metallic blue. And unlike Grodd, which was more of a realistic gorilla sculpt, this figure is a bit more stylized, kind of giving me a Planet of the Apes meets Thundercats vibe. Very nice detail. He's got that sort of fierce looking monkey head on his pauldron. Very nice sculpting throughout. And he is pretty much armored from head to toe, even his legs. Looking at the back, we can see he does have very long hair on his head sculpt, as well as a small sculpted cape. For articulation, he does get some pretty good movements side to side on the head. Despite that long hair, it is flexible. As we can see, there is a lot of space between the hair and the back of the head to allow for movement. Almost looks like his skull is unfinished if you look at it from that angle. He gets 360 in the shoulders. He does have somewhat of a bicep swivel. It can't go 360, and it really doesn't go in the outer direction, only inward, like so. Double jointed elbows, and he gets a 360 swivel in the wrist. He does have a good range of motion in the waist, and actually a really nice range of motion in the ab crunch. And there is a little bit of a ratchet in there. He gets a nice range of motion in the hips because his armor skirt is sculpted to be split in several different places to allow for range of motion. Double jointed knees, as well as a thigh cut, and the ankles can go up and down, and there is a bit of a ankle rocker in there as well. And just like the skirt, the armor that comes down over his foot is very flexible, so that's not going to hinder any foot movement. So it seems there was a lot of thought put into the design of this figure so as not to hinder any articulation. You will get a good range of poses from this figure. Here are his two swords, and there are actually a lot of really nice sculpted details in these weapons. They both have a lot of pockmarks and small cracks that make them look like they've been through several battles, and there's even some nice sculpting on the hilts to make them look like they're covered in leather. The fingers on his hands are flexible enough so that you can get the swords in there, and then once they're in, the fingers will close back and grip those hilts tightly. So I like that. I like not having to heat up a hand or do any of that nonsense to get a figure to hold its accessory. Here is that pistol, done in that same gold and blue as the armor and the swords. Like I said, looking very much like a steampunk weapon or something a pirate would use. And the sculpting of the hand does allow you to get a finger in that trigger if you so desire. And these are the same hands that were holding the swords. I have not switched out his hands yet, because the other sets of hands, as I showed you, were closed fists or just open hands. So these are the pair of hands you're going to use for manipulating any of his weapons. One thing to note, while I was posing him, this left bicep did pop off. Now this is not broken. This is attached by a simple peg-in hole system. So I'm not sure if it's made to detach so that you won't break it at that point, but it simply pops right back in. But it is something to note. I'm not sure if that's a unique problem to this particular figure, or if that's something that's a problem with all the figures line-wide. I have not seen any other reviews of this series yet, but just something to note. In Planet of the Apes, Caesar said that ape shall never kill ape, but in this case we have to make an exception. One of these golden armor-clad simian warlords has to come out on top. So which will it be? Old fan favorite Grodd or Kali, a character from a brand new mythology? In an actual battle, Grodd's superhuman abilities of telekinesis and telepathy would surely have given him the edge. But in this figure battle, it's Kali that comes out on top. Kali's superior articulation alone gives him a leg up over Grodd, but the fact that he comes with 2 sets of alternate hands and 3 weapons is just icing on the cake. This is the first time I've handled a figure from Spiro Toys, and I am very impressed with it. So Kali takes this battle. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. Again, thanks to Jim Salzberg for providing the content for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.